What's going on, young preacher? Welcome to another episode of Dear Young Preacher. My name is Benji, and I'm so excited that you're watching today. Fellas, this message today is for everybody, but like fellas, I feel like this is for you. So turn on your volume, turn it up all the way, because it's for you. So when I was like 13, my godmother got me a Christmas gift. I love getting gifts, okay? I also love that Christmas is for Jesus, but I love gifts. And she gets me a Christmas gift, and it's High School Musical. I cried because High School Musical was the greatest movie I had ever seen up to that point. I cried, and I never cry. I'm like a macho man. I never cry, but today we're talking about being vulnerable. Roll intro. What's going on, young preacher? Welcome back from the intro. So excited you're watching. And if you didn't know, Dear Young Preacher is simply thoughts and experiences from one young preacher to another. I don't know it all, but I could definitely share some of the things that I've been through. Like I said in the intro, today we're talking about vulnerability, and it's gonna be a really good conversation. If there's one thing you should know about me, is I like to consider myself like a macho man. Really, I guess what I mean by it is I just never cry. I mean, I'll cry at a funeral. I'll cry when High School Musical is playing. I'll cry when I go to Krispy Kreme and get a good Krispy Kreme dough. But besides that, you'll never catch me crying. I'll be like, I don't cry. That's just who I am. And I remember taking a class at Gordon College and a professor saying to me, Benji, one of the things that you really need in sermon development is to be vulnerable. You preach and you're talking, but it feels like the audience doesn't know you. And honestly, I mean, there's so much truth to that because people will never listen to you until they know who you are. And I was like really floored by it because we live in a society where men aren't told to be vulnerable. We're told to be strong. We're told to do all that we have to do on our own, not seek help, not seek insight. And so when we're told to be vulnerable, it's almost this like foreign concept. But there's so much beauty in vulnerability. You know, leadership nowadays isn't the person with the title, but it's the leader who shows, I'm with you in the struggle. I don't have it all figured out, but I'm with you in your trials and in your journeys. So let's walk together and let's figure it out. I always think back to Paul, 2 Corinthians, when he's talking about that thorn in his flesh. You know, he has that thing that, no one really likes to talk about, but what he does with it is so dope. He's vulnerable in that moment and says, I have a thorn in my flesh, but he says, ultimately, it will glorify Jesus. He points to the issue, but then he brings it back to Christ. How powerful would it be to hear words, to hear messages, to be encouraged by people? Yeah, they're going through some situations, but you'll always turn it and be like, no matter the pain, no matter the struggle, I will turn this and point it back to Jesus. Pastor Steven Furtick preached a sermon, Pressure Points. That my pressure, the pains, ultimately, the pressure points that we have, that pressure that I have, that I feel, it ultimately points to Christ. I remember going to a conference this past weekend, hearing Pastor Michael Todd, and he shared, vulnerability is simply, where are you now and where do you want to be? So we asked him, where are you now? And he shared a really personal story. And then we said, where do you want to be? And he said, I want to love people more with my words. And I was so taken aback by his willingness to be vulnerable with a bunch of people that he didn't even know. Young preacher, young leader, your vulnerability makes a difference. It lets people know that they can follow you because you're not afraid to show your real self. We all have problems, we all have struggles, and what we need isn't more leaders who think they have it all put together, but who recognize their flaws and who could say, yeah, I'm not really good at this thing and I have this weakness here, but my vulnerability points to Christ. So I'm here to say to my fellas, to the ladies, be vulnerable because it connects you with people. Thank you. Yo, what's going on, guys? I really hope you enjoyed that talk about being vulnerable. I think it's such an essential task to talk about. We live in a society, like we said before, you know, vulnerability is kind of like, no, we don't want to do it. We don't want to be vulnerable. But if you could be genuinely vulnerable and not to, you know, manipulate others, but to have it come from the heart, you could lead so much more effectively. And so be vulnerable in all that you do. Check out this video, by the way. I was about to say grace and peace, but check out this video right here first, then grace and peace. I'll see y'all.